Hello world, and welcome to our live stream. I'm Nefarious.
And I'm Frequency Girl.
And today we are joined by Adam Lawson from Gifted Rebels, here to talk all about his current comic book crowdfunding campaign, Kids and Monsters, available over on Indiegogo. What is up, Adam? How are you doing? Hey!
Guys,
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween. Last night, I had to come in with the Kill Journal mask. That's for everybody who backed this. Not that I want to take over your the Kill Journal and got this. They probably had a rad night last night because you certainly had the coolest mask at the party. You can see
Yeah,
it's
absolutely, man. The texture
So
on that's
good,
gorgeous.
yeah.
I love the
Yeah.
whole design. Yeah, is
Yeah,
it
and
nice
it's
and hard
true.
or is it flexible?
Yeah, no, this is true resin. This is a resin
Okay.
fiberglass combo. So when I direct television, if I was going to have a mask, this is what it would be. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it is not a party store mask for sure. It is the it's the real deal.
I'm gonna have to show you one of my resin masks that I got in the back. Maybe when the
I'm
stream is
ready.
over, I'll show that off to you.
Ready to see it.
Yep.
My robot face mask. So let's check it out. We've got Alejandro Villas, Infinity Comics in the chat.
Yes,
We've got
there he
the one
is.
and only Mo Biggs. We have Connery. Connery, I hope you're feeling better, my friend. We missed you last night on karaoke. Hope you're feeling better now. We got 24 Eyes up in the house, and we've got Noah, NTM
Hey,
Comics. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm sure we'll have some other people filtering in along the way. But Mr. Lawson, let's get started. Where are you from? And
So I'm a
how'd
mutt.
you get into comics?
Yeah, I'm a mutt. Minnesota, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Michigan, Utah. And then Los Angeles. That's my single longest place. That's where I'm in Burbank. I live out if you step out my condo balcony, you can see Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney Animation right out the door. Yeah. So I'm not in the heart of where film and television is made, and it's fun. The Jim Lee, that statue he had made of his black and white cover, it's one block from my house.
Wow.
When I walk my dog every morning, I walk past it. It's this 7-foot bronze, beautiful, Jim Lee statue. And why I mention that is because you mentioned where it started. I think when I was young, it was Jim Lee's art that convinced me that superheroes weren't just dopey guys in underwear. That it was like, I remember going in to get a role-playing game, and I remember seeing his Chris Claremont X-Men cover, and I was like, what's this? All of a sudden, Cyclops is like badass, and he's got these red sunglasses versus this sort of like weird visor thing, and it really changed it for me, right? I think if he had never been in there, I think I might have just skipped that, coincidentally, and I certainly my art taste has expanded beyond that, but there's always kind of a place in my heart for Jim Lee because that early moment where you're like, oh. This is comic art.
I turned
right?
12, I think. I was 11, 12 when Silvestri and Lee and McFarlane were putting out that stuff. And so when I turned 13, all of that kind of fell into my lap. And it was the Jim Lee X-Men was the first one that really turned me on because I was aware of X-Men. And then I saw his take on it, like you said, and that changed the game for me. And then I became an Image kid. And that's why, like you said, our art tastes have expanded, maybe matured, or at least developed in multiple different directions. We've taken in influences from Europe, from the East, all sorts of different styles of art that we can appreciate now. But there's still that soft spot in the heart for, oh, look, it's Mark Silvestri, who we were just talking about earlier today, or, it's Rob Liefeld with giant eyes and feet. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. And
it's still, it's got that resonance, we love it.
It resonates with you. Right. And it's not that is the best art or what, because the best doesn't really exist. Right. I mean, it's so eye of the beholder. It's like, but what it is it's the art that initially awakened you. Right. And so it's like,
of it too.
So there's something really special there. Like I was I don't know if you've read Jodorowsky's Meta Barons, and you look at the art of that book, and I think,
It's right. It's
uh,
right here.
yeah, you get it.
It's literally like right here.
It's literally right there. I should have seen
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean, right? We're talking about maybe arguably the greatest graphic novel of all time. I think there's definitely some debate on that, but certainly it's certainly on anybody's top five. And I think that that art I couldn't maybe have fully loved when I was, like you're saying, 12 or 13.
Yeah. Yep. It would have
I might
gone
not have
right
been able
over the
to.
head. It wouldn't have been interesting enough. Like, it really came along at the right time, that image stuff,
Right.
and grabbed our attention because there was such
That's right.
detail and freneticism to it. And it was
Yeah.
so sleek and cool. It kind of appealed to the ADD teenager in me. You're right.
Right, and just the way the capes, they turn those capes into this like artistic
Yeah.
expression. Turns into a
Even
spawn,
smoke,
right?
smoke, so cool. I was
Right.
always drawn cigarette smoke and like weird, like wafting clouds because of all of the stuff that I saw in those early 90s comic books. But you're right. We
Right.
would never have appreciated that stuff, or Black Sad or Gypsy or any of the stuff that came later
Totally.
if we hadn't gotten introduced to that early stage of our diet, right?
Totally. No, I know. I fully agree. And it's like when you look at like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? They've done one really special design, and it was just a copy of Jodorowsky's, right? It was those whale-like ships, right? The big blue whale-like ships that came in with Thanos's, and you're like, I remember seeing those in the theater, and I was like, literally, they just copied and pasted that. They literally just would click. Hey guys, could you just build me this thing? But anyways, I digress on that. And so then I think then there was kind of a couple of key moments that changed things, for me after that, right? One is I was doing Snakes on a Plane, and Samuel Jackson came to set with 100 Bullets, Brian Azzarello, and I've told the story a bunch because it was like a real defining moment for me because I was like, what is this 100 Bullets book?
That's one of those books too. That's one of the books that changes it for you. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, and it was him reading it, right? Which is this absurd name dropping thing, but it's like, and it's funny because his daughter is now my story producer because she works in reality TV, and she's lovely. I remember looking at that and I'm like, this is cool enough for Sam Jackson, then it has to be cool enough for me. I mean, this is like, he's the definition of cool. So it's like, I've got to try this out. And then that really just opened, like you're saying, the door to Image. And like, it became my real love was, stories without capes or cowls, right? And that it opened that door. Not that I don't love those two. Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, as we speak of Daniel Warren Johnson, was awesome. But that really, and then there was this, I remember reading Swamp Thing, which is also here behind me, Alan Moore's Volume 1 Swamp Thing. Okay. Yep.
You're hitting all the right notes, man.
Yeah, it's like this is right, it's right here, it's like once this is the copy that I bought originally. I think it's been 20 years ago that I bought it. At a convention, and somebody said, "No, I think you should read this. It's really game changing." And I was like, well, "What is this thing?"
Swamp Thing. Yeah, no,
and
same reaction.
I remember reading it
algae
like,
monster. What?
What is this? And it's like, I remember reading this inside jacket cover. This is the place. It breathes. It eats, and at night beneath a crawling ground fog with the luster of vaporized pearl, it dreams while tiny predators stage a nightmare ballet in sharp black grass. It is a living thing. It has a soul. It has a face. And I remember reading those words, and I was just overcome by what that was.
How did you put literature in my comic book?
That's right. And you say, and then you read this. That's exactly right. And then you're like, what is this incredible piece of something? And you're just devouring this book, right? And Alan, and obviously, don't be confused. The absolute unbelievable art, coming in from Daniel Day and the other people involved. Don't confuse that. But like when you start to read those words, how he's talking about Arcane and like that relationship that's there, and then then that transpired to The Killing Joke, and you realize there's something more here that I can ever, than just a picture book, right? There's like a depth that is almost limitless. And so that's what really, made that decision. I was like, someday I'm going to do that, and I, write and direct television for a living, and I've been writing TV and film for a long time. But there was always this place in me waiting for that day. And then the pandemic, Warner Brothers canceled my TV show and sort of set the whole industry into a spiral, and I thought, I'm going to jump into this comic book thing. And the indie scene kind of developed with crowdfunding. And I was like, what a more fun way to do it actually than like trying to get Image to make your book or trying to get Thank you, Creators Outlet. Trying to get
Thanks,
these
Will.
people,
Yeah.
trying to get these people to make your book, because that's what I do for a living. I go to studios and I pitch shows, right? And I've sold many of them, and lots of them have not gotten made, and some have gotten made, right?
Right.
And so, like, man, the thought of then now having to do that again with comic books was like, there's no money in this thing, so why on earth would you be? Thank you for digging into 12 Dogs of Christmas. Thank you for digging into the.
Mo knows, man. Mo knows all. He is the internet.
Mo Biggs is the ultimate.
How's it going, Collision Bob? Thanks for tuning in.
But you know what I mean? The thought of like having to go and like pitch, but instead of there being a big paycheck waiting after all this hustling, there's like a no paycheck waiting, and then still an editor bossing you around. It was like, I mean, this is like the worst idea I could think of to do with your life creatively, for me, right? Because at least it's like I'm producing 2 commercials right now, and it's really fun because it's like it's cool. You're gonna spend $1 million to make 1 minute of content, right? And so it's like great, everybody's well paid, so nobody cares, right? And so you can like be above it. But if you had to like stress and struggle, and it's like, and here's your check, $50. It's like, and not to insult those who do, but it just was like, if I'm going to be in that zone where I need somebody else's permission, if I need somebody else's permission, then I'm gonna do it at a different level. But
Mo Biggs is saying, why get paid $50 when you could just get paid in exposure? It's a new form of currency.
It's called exposure. Exactly, Mo. That's even more important, right? And so it's the thing that I realized about it, right, is that like what made it exciting was the idea that you could make your own stories without having to pitch some other person to get them to approve it, them to weigh in on notes in it, and their ideas that then you somehow have to get filled into that. Yes, Amanda B, that's correct. We filmed it in Bethel, Maine. There were 72 dogs and 72 kids. It was quite the operation. It was Keith Merrill directed that, won an Academy Award for American Cowboy. It was a family film. It was really quite the journey. It was one of my, I think it was my second film in Los Angeles. I did this movie called Think Tank right before that. I was the first AD at the time. It was the same producers who did Napoleon Dynamite. And we did a handful of films together back to back early on. I was a first AD, which anybody who doesn't know what that is on set. You're the person who lots of times people think is the director when you come to set because you're doing all the yelling and maneuvering people around, but really you're just somebody to herd people for the director to work. So yeah, like, right. So that's what I thought, indie books are so cool because then you can cut that out, right? And I'm sure, I don't know, maybe you guys feel the same. It's like the idea of like, oh, your editor doesn't like your book. And it's like, but it's like how
I like the freedom that comes with doing, working for yourself. I've always enjoyed working for myself when I got into entrepreneurship and I became an investor and things like that. I've always enjoyed working as my own boss, like making my own way. I thought that if I was going to get into an industry like this, when I got in entertainment, it's just, I don't need to go to someone else's entertainment enterprise and make my way up the food chain when I can just start small on my own, but start at the top, So I would rather be doing my thing small scale than work in something very, very large scale and be a tiny cog in the machine and then hope to grow into something big, because I'll only ever achieve what the people above me want to let me achieve. Whereas if I'm starting small on my own, I'll grow into whatever I want to be. If you're on the fence about kids and monsters, I've got 2 words for you: backpack monsters.
Yes. Really the only 2 words that you need.
Yes. Mo understands. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I feel like that's really the ride, right? Not that it's like, that's what makes it, at least for me. Like I was talking to my buddy who's a showrunner at Disney Plus, and he does animation, and he said, I really just sell kids toys. It's been hard for me to accept that, but that's what I am. I sell kids toys, and we pretend to make TV shows, and if I really wanted to do something that was artistic and an expression of who I am, I'd make a comic book. At that moment, he didn't know that I was doing them, and so I pull out this comic book. And he's like, "See, I get it. That's what you do if you want an opportunity to make something artistic." Right. And so I think that's what's the motive in it for me, is that this is really like a labor of love. It's like it's a really fun passion. And I'm trying to figure it out monetarily, right? So it can continue. and to keep continuing it. But really, so that's my journey into it.
You've got a pervasive multimedia entertainment background. Definitely doing comic books is a way for you to get your creative voice going outside of, like film or television, but you've also done stuff with Netflix. So developing your own properties rather than developing or working on someone else's IP allows you to bring forward, more than just proof of concept, and actually fully fleshed out story with beautiful art. And, maybe you option that, who knows? And you start going in a direction that we've all wanted to see, better entertainment in the different fields of entertainment that we consume. And that's just a great way to start, I think. So tell me about your experience with Failed Superheroes Club. I'm just going to kind of jump over some of the stuff.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of the stuff that I have planned later.
So Failed Superheroes Club, essentially my company now is Gifted Rebels, right? Which the Failed Superheroes Club just became that. Yes, thank you, Billy. Billy's one of the good ones.
Yeah, Billy's awesome.
Billy, yeah, I know. It's like we were just talking the other day. It's like anything Billy touches just gets a little better. He's like the add Billy. Oh, do you have something? Just throw Billy in the mix, and now it's a little better on the other side.
Better.
Yep.
Yeah, he's so great. But I think that so I just changed the name because ultimately, when trying to trademark Failed Superheroes Club, you just run into so many legal complications from DC and Marvel over the world's superhero. Which, even though technically they can't co-own it, but they both co-own it. They have a weird. Like our lawyer, our firm was just like, this is a non-thing that they can own this word in the way they own it in all formats, and compiled in sentences. It's not technically legal, but unless you're Riot Games, it's probably not worth the fight because you're gonna.
Now, if they spelled superhero differently, then maybe they could get away with it.
Like
maybe you could
maybe
take out an E or
because
an X.
No, they can still get you on the implication of it. And so you said that,
probably do have lawyers. Yep.
And Disney's quite litigious about it. Both Warner and Disney are quite litigious about that word in particular. So we said, let's just change this. And then as we were coming up with names, it was like Gifted Rebels really just kind of even fit better. And then the fact that it was birthed out of the fact that we got crunched by the big two, as these little guys, it felt like the right thing to do. And so then I had Jorn who drew the 8th, build the logo. And then so that we're off to Gifted Rebels, which if you go to giftedrebels.com, you can see the Shopify store is up.
Yep.
And in motion.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's very simplistic, but beautiful because you put the products forward. You don't need to gussy it up with all sorts of other icons and stuff. Just the books are beautiful. The logo for the game is really nice. That whole landing page is spectacular.
And if you want to check it out for yourself, the link is in the description of the video.
Yeah, thank you. And because I feel like I'm sure you guys are probably thinking this too. Is you've got Mavericks coming and you've got lots of products surrounding it.
Mavericks.com is on the way. It is currently in development with Moxie. Ichthus, no, that was last night, my dude. Check out the karaoke stream. I was wearing my Maverick costume from Top Gun. We had people come in earlier. I want to just take my opportunity to say hi. I saw we had Pops and Aerith and Collision Bomb, and I didn't say hi to Amanda B.
I was going to say,
and Hex, Neostar. Thank you for showing up, Riseman. We're glad to have you here. And of course Billy.
Did you say hi to Will?
I said hi to Will earlier.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
And
if I haven't called out your name, just yell at me in the comments and I'll see it. Thanks so much for coming, guys. Really do appreciate you tuning in and helping us grow. Back to Adam. So you've clearly got something for horror style subject matter, when it comes to Kill Journal and even the 8th, there's definitive elements of horror in that. Right. How are you approaching horror differently in Kids and Monsters?
Right. So I think that, as when you look at the Kill Journal, right, the Kill Journal has this very gothic, it's a slasher story. You can see all the beautiful art in this book done by Jason Krager here. You can see that we have this cool experience with this book. You can see it's all that. I love this Jason's cover here for this. In this this deals with what I would say is slasher horror in the sense where it deals with a really direct physical conflict. It's frightening. It's horrifying. You're going to get beaten up and broken, right? And so which is what I love about it, right? It's like what you like about
I can't say it. Chauncey Blakey. Okay,
I
you
said
did.
it.
You did. I say Chauncey Blackney or
Yeah, you
what?
just
I
make
butcher
it up every time.
I'm sorry, Chauncey. Yeah. So you were saying slasher style with Kill Journal. The
oh
eighth
yeah,
was
and it's
more fantasy horror.
right. There was like
arcane,
this
devil
yeah,
summoning.
right. Well, there's this feeling of this. I think I in stories, right, that like that horror is essentially horror and fantasy are at the core the same thing. They're dealing and supernatural. They're all the same thing. They're dealing with an element that's non-real, right? where that you've incorporated into what in a fantasy the whole setting is not real, whereas in horror you take a non-real thing and stick it in a real setting to make it scary, or at least it's often the case, right? And so I think with Kids and Monsters, what I wanted to craft is a tale. One is where from a horror standpoint there was this idea of monsters and beasts, and I think that they in this case the red beasts are the villains, right? Because the tale's about these kids who get these backpacks with monsters in them, and the monsters are their allies, whereas the red beasts are the villains, right? And I think the aspect of horror that comes into this is really this idea of these aggressive, horrifying beasts that are going to devour you whole. And I think that's the feeling that maybe you often felt as a teenager, that you could just be devoured whole by the, that Clive Barker said it best, right? That the great gray beast February had almost devoured me whole, right? There is this feeling as a kid like that your emotions are going to consume you completely, right? And I think that that's what's at play with these red beasts, right? Like they're going to consume you, chew, swallow you whole. Is the threat, because at the core, these kids, their parents their parents' divorce is looming, right? And so there's this, there's this fear that comes from that as a child, that how that could just devastate anything, or as a teenager, that just devastates your core foundation, right? So, and the emotion is overwhelming from that. That has this sort of feeling of being swallowed whole.
Yeah, but Amanda B, then they would grab you and drag you under the bed, and you would get swallowed whole by whatever dimension they sucked you into, right?
It starts with the feet.
Yeah, it starts with the feet. Yeah, it starts with the feet.
Yes, and I think that was the aspect of horror that I wanted to create out of this. This smothering of feelings that you unfortunately can't control because you're a kid in a grown-up's world. So, and in this case, the world is being ripped in half, right? It's being ripped open. They start to see these cracks in the earth, right? And as they're starting, the red beasts are starting to rip it apart, and it becomes a metaphor for what's happening at home, right? Their parents, their family could potentially be ripped apart, and the world could be ripped apart. So, can they save the world from being torn in two and their own family? Right, this kind of this layer of these metaphors. I think that Pan's Labyrinth is one of my favorite films.
Yes,
it's
so creepy.
Right?
It's so creepy.
It's the best,
Beautiful,
right?
creepy. Beautiful, creepy,
right?
But it definitely gave me nightmares. Everything gives me nightmares.
Mo says when we're talking about starting at the feet that it isn't a Nasser book, even though Nasser did do Creepsters. So we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to keep moving on. Hey, it's Black Rose Comics up in the chat. What is up?
Yo.
Disappointment.
You still owe us a thriller.
You do. You owe us Thriller, and we will come to collect from you.
Oh yes, it is not over.
Send people to go after those knees.
Like the monsters under the bed.
So getting into it then, like what's the setting of Kids and Monsters? What's it like? You've got monsters in backpacks and you've got the red beasts, right? And you've got the kids, this divorce is happening. Why don't you pull us into the, I guess, like the story pitch and then go into the characters for us?
Right. So it's set in a crumbling town called Lovelock. And if you were paying attention in the 8th, it's also set in Lovelock, right? And so is the Kill Journal. So it's my Castle Rock, if you will.
Nice.
All the things maneuver around it. So it opens right with the kid saying, I started to see the cracks in the world once my parents started fighting, right? And so Gatsby is our initial point of view character that takes us in. This is the younger boy, and he and his older sister Mally are the two kids, and then Jin-Soo becomes Mally's boyfriend early on at the beginning of book 1, and is along the ride for them. And And so the struggle is that they see these cracks in the world being ripped apart, very much like their families being ripped apart. And Gatsby discovers that his math teacher is actually a cultist, and he's leading the Red Beast. He's like their counterpoint on the world above, because the cracks are actually revealing the world within. So there's this fantastical world that lives within this one that has been bonded to our world, if you will, by these 6 rings. And once they've been destroyed, the 2 worlds will be ripped apart and everyone in them will be miserable. And so that's our setting. And Gatsby ends up falling into the world within and uncovers one of these monsters' keeps, or it's these backpacks, but they're essentially like a Dungeons and Dragons bag of holding, right?
Yeah.
The backpack is just an opening to a pocket dimension where this monster's castle is. And so they come crawling out of that, and the monsters have sworn to protect the 6 rings that keep the 2 worlds together. And the 6 rings are representative of these promises, if you will. And the monsters were once unruly and difficult, and then they were rallied and became dignified, right? So this standing for this covenant also is kind of was part of their redemption too. So they're on the kids' side. They're not controlled by them like a robot, but they're on their side in this fight. And so, and the Red Beasts have allies in the world above. And there's, you see in the campaign, you see 2 of the Red Beasts, but there's many of those are kind of, so to speak, the drudges or the foot soldiers. And then they have, there's a Hydra version of the Red Beast. There's other cooler, scarier versions as you go up the chain.
Yeah, we're gonna have Frequency Girl put up the campaign images. So the backpack monsters, do they communicate with the kids? It's
they
not
do.
like Pokemon where they can only say one word, right? They can actually
no, they can talk and they can talk and have conversations. They're intelligent. Now they're different, right? Like this purple one you see here on your background. This is Gren, and he's almost like a woodland alchemist, if you will. He brews potions. That's his monster gift
on the background.
And he is one of the keepers of the lore, so he has lots of information. So here you can see are the Red Beasts, and the guy on the rooftop is Gatsby's cultist math teacher.
There's Gren.
So you can see this is Gren here, right?
That's what I'm doing.
So he has he knows a lot of the lore of the world. He's a brilliant has a brilliant mind, as well as this lumbering monster. Whereas like Mally's monster is this ogre berserker who is full of all this rage, and so she's not having necessarily complex conversations. She's going on full instinct because Gatsby's older sister has a lot of anger due to the troubles at home.
What's going on?
So the monsters become an expression of the kid in some way, because the teen who finds the backpack, they can't find one or see it yet until they overcome some weakness, and then they can see the backpacks, and then the monsters has some reflection of them in it.
So once again, you're doing something very thoughtfully here. I was going to ask you later on about subtextual themes present in your work. And what you're doing is you're telling me a story about it's not just mindless horror and monster combat. Although monster combat is a lot of fun, you're tying it to a real world scary thing that kids have to deal with called their parents breaking up. And they have to overcome something frightening, something limiting in order for them to really gain access and harness the power of those monsters to fight against the monsters that are threatening them. Right. Usually I ask people like, why should I care about your book? But you've already summed it up beautifully right there, because it's thoughtful. And that's the subtextual element that you're putting into it. It's this 2-layered fight against the monsters in our own lives, especially as kids. Backpacks, day, bow, crack packs, backpacks. I like it. Thank you so much. We are definitely home to the crack pack on this channel. It is a home away from home.
I also want to say
hello, what about? Good to see you. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us today. I see people like really going after B-Rose in the chat, man. I'm not going to put any of that
Amanda B wants him to dance now.
So apparently now B-Rose also has to put in the Thriller dance, and Mo's really calling him out. We're gonna let that be. They're gonna deal with the demons that they have in the chat. We're gonna get back to this. Okay, fine. I'll put this one up. B-Rose,
and
your triple
Amanda
threat.
B.
1, writing. 2, acting. 3, disappointing everyone. Singing is part of that. Yes, singing is part of all those things go into singing, right?
What are you gonna say, Adam?
Oh no, the Amanda B. She has a special place in my heart. Not only is she a cool girl,
Yeah.
but she was backer number 1. She was backer number 1. Yeah, because I tried.
We were what, number
3?
3? I think
Yeah.
we were not number 1, but if I had to lose, I'm
Glad it was
happy to
Amanda
lose
B.
it to Amanda B.
Right.
Right?
She's Frequency Girl's BFF.
Yes, I love
on the
Amanda.
Yeah,
on the internet.
yeah, she's totally cool.
Right.
And I think, I know I've tried to do that too. Like I tried to get, Rob Geronimo. I love Rob, and his book Blood Rome is really epic.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and so he launched, and like I got it, but because I tried to read some of the campaign, which I should not have done. I should have just backed it and been focused. I lost my first position because I was like, oh, 0 backers, go. Anyways, but.
That's funny.
Which one was it that I wasn't signed in? I think it was actually the Silhouette recently, and I think after that I was like, I'd give up. Stupid, didn't get the number 1.
You went like a little bit.
Yeah, you went
before
15 minutes
9.
early.
Yeah.
You went 15 minutes early, didn't you?
I
think you
picked
did.
up.
I think
Yeah,
you
I
sent out
picked
the,
up
like,
my phone. I'm like, oh, let me make sure I'm logged in. What? It's live? Oh no!
Already? So let's talk about the physical book itself. It's an oversized 8.3 by 11 point. I failed my quest to be Packer 69.
So that is so that's A4 sizing, right? So that is, if you could imagine, like,
make them big.
Speaking of, Daniel Warren Johnson, I
Get out.
yeah, that's just the book. I mean, he's just the artist of the year, I think, right now. And I think Maxine Gallo.
Yep.
So like this is standard comic. This back here is A4 sizing. We'll actually add a little bit here is A4 sizing. So what makes it fun is when you open up the pages, right? You get this kind of effect. You get this boom. It's a huge thing, right? And so I wanted that feeling in the same way that they're going into the world within, that when you open it, it was that boom, you are in this massive world with all these experiences. And so I think that was at like the heart of me why making that choice. And I also
the same way. Big robots need a big book, right? We went 9 by 12, but just a little bit larger than A4 size. Garrett really wanted to do like the Euro
like the Belgian
art book
gypsy
size. Like, of course, he has to measure it in metric rather than American sizes, right? We couldn't be 8.3, we'd be 9 on the dot. But it's also hardcover, and I love the fact you're doing a hardcover book, and it's 72 pages, so it's over that 60-page story limit, and you're giving us something nice and thick. I really appreciate. I like it thick. I like it thick, right? Mo's gonna.
I know you do, and I think because I feel like sometimes when you're backing a campaign, because I think about it in 2 ways. One is, what can somebody get at the store for $25? Right? They can get.
You're competing with
this. They can get this for $30, right? So it's like, and it's hardcover and it's awesome. And Mike Spicer, my colorist, did this book, and it's a great book. And you think that's what they can get for $30, right? And you can get this guy, this guy for $20, right? So it's like you really have to think about. I know, also Mike Spicer.
Also Mike Spicer.
Because I just think that what he's doing, because I think James Heron is in this camp. I think Maxie, who's doing Kids and Monsters, is the next guy to join this camp of guys who are really just doing the cutting edge stuff.
We were lucky enough to work
get
a
Maxie
little
on
bit
an
with Maxie.
A4.
He did
he did an A4 for us on Mavericks. He did the Jack Irons and Mavericks crossover print. He's fantastic, and definitely there's a crop of people that are kind of coming up in that style. Garrett was also telling me about an arts collected out of Canada that includes the dude who did Orc Stain, James Stocco, or Stokoe. I don't know how to say his name. It's another one of those books where it's just, you wouldn't expect it. Like Daniel Warren Johnson's style is so different from what you would see in the contemporary comic book art scene. The Stocco art, which is another one of Garrett's like favorite artists. I do get heavily influenced by Garrett with the art that I can consume. What's that?
Okay, so James Stocco. Okay, I'm seeing that. This is a guy to have on my list.
It's insanely detailed. He does lots of fiddly stuff Like you can really see here, like it's just
Dope.
lots of detail and he draws giant orc gronches hanging on walls and stuff. And the story is fun too. He did Sobek. I think Sobek might be back there. I don't know. But like I said, Garrett really influences the stuff that I look at as far as art is concerned. And I like to think that I influence his exposure to writing and different story in general, but I could be wrong. But yeah, 72 pages, hardcover, oversized, and that's great. And you really are having it compete with what else is out there on the market, even though you're doing indie. And since indie's
because the thing is,
industry, you can afford to be a little bit more expensive because people are supporting indie creators.
Right. Well, see, what I have to think about is I have to think about long term, right? And I was talking about this with Bancroft and Rob the other day. It's like the thing about it is when pricing is you have to price it at a number that works long term if you want to have a second life beyond the campaign, right? Because when somebody goes to buy your Shopify store, it's no longer like a book your crowdfunding and everybody believes in the journey. It's just a product they're just seeing on a digital shelf, right? So if the number is like, if you're charging somebody $25 for a 52-page staple bound book, they're like, what? And maybe if it was signed and there's some special things, people might justify it. But like, you really have to be able to push this into a realm where it looks like what you could get someplace else, I think, to have longevity with it, right? And so that your pricing has to be comparable to the open market, I think. And then also, too,
at least your quality does. At the very least, your quality has to be comparable to it, even if it is going to be a little bit more expensive simply because you're a small publisher. You don't have the distribution arm that Marvel does. You can't get into all of these stores, so you're not going to sell the units that Marvel does, which means you're not going to get priced per unit the way Marvel does, and you're not going to get the type of return on investment through proliferation that Marvel does. You're small, so you have to have really high quality, and hopefully down the line the price will get even more and more inexpensive. But I think a lot of people who do engage in crowdfunding are willing to go that extra $5 or even $10 because they know they're getting something from an indie creator who exists kind of parallel to, but outside of this sort of mainstream dominated industry. And you coming from the background that you do, you really are like in entertainment. You're in Hollywood, you're in LA. You can see everything from your window. So maybe for you, it might be different, but for someone like me, who's never worked directly inside of the mainstream entertainment industry, I like to think that what I'm doing will never be picked up by anyone like that. It'll never be running in that circle. So it has to exist off of the goodwill and financial support of people who are willing to invest in an indie creator.
Sure. True. No, it's certainly true. And I think, and I think that's what is exciting about this is you get to be a part of something, right? With the indie world, and I think that's why it's so fun, and I'm having just such a great time with it. And here's a curious question: that image right there? Have you refreshed that screen recently?
You haven't, but it just got sold, didn't it? I was looking at this earlier today.
I'm seeing that.
Probably have not.
Yeah, hit the refresh.
Oh, okay. That's totally fine. I was just like, wait a minute. I thought I made that change. You know how
I was when you make stunned because I have to admit I was kind of looking to get my hands on that thing.
Yeah, we were just
and I was just a little bit too late, I guess, because someone else was like, "Hey, we're just gonna grab the figure, the one of a kind figurine."
Yeah, no, it's in fact, I had it here on my desk, and when somebody back this morning, I took it off and put it in a box so that it could not get
destroyed. Smart,
because I had this feeling. I was like, of course, now that you've sold it, it'll fall off your desk. It'll fall off your desk. And no, in fact, it's an amazing collector. On the 8th, I had also a one-off piece that was pretty epic, and he also got that, and as well as this. And so he's been really a great, amazing support, and I have a lot of love for the guy. And so, and I didn't know
at least I know that I lost out to someone who's a true fan, who's an Adam Lawson collector who really appreciates the stuff that you do. So yeah. So all right, if I was going to lose out to somebody, I'm glad it was this individual who will not be named.
Right. And what's cool is I wanted to build something that was truly a one-off. It wasn't it wasn't kit bash. It wasn't a toy that we built into that. It was a it was a sculpt that was only this thing, right? That lives as that. And I think once again, there's a fun thing about crowdfunding because it's like to get a one of a kind original sculpt that's hand painted, handmade. It's like you can't actually get that from Marvel, or it's 50 grand, right? And so, it's pretty cool. But that's I think was the nature of the book, and I wanted to do. And then we're also going to be doing something. I have it on Kickstarter too, like you guys did as well. And to launch it, you kind of need something separated on Kickstarter. And so there's a unique perk that's on the Kickstarter campaign.
I know I was going to ask about this.
That I'm going to bring over to the Indiegogo campaign this weekend. When I go to the In Demand, and also, because Shay is the one who did the design on it. I don't know if you know her from Red Valkyrie.
Oh, yep, we love Shay.
Yeah, she's great. So to separate it, and actually, and I know there's been some negative feelings about Kickstarter sometimes, or
Kickstarter
back and forth on it, but they've been pretty great with myself. I've done board games on there. Because that's really the place for board games.
I have notes about that here too.
Because launching your board game on Indiegogo is like
it's hard.
You just threw your money into the trash. You just don't do games. It's just not there.
People don't do games on Indiegogo. They do comics.
They just don't. They do comics, but they still do games. Like you have no crowd, and they've been really great with me over that time. I know there's been some mixed feelings, and but they've been great with myself. So I thought, what, there are some people who just have different camps they want to be in. And so, so like yourselves, I have it in both. But what?
I don't know what is. I don't know what I said that Eric is going, what? But yeah, you clearly lean into the Indiegogo stuff. You've run 3 campaigns there. You've run 2 on Kickstarter. Kickstarter isn't, I guess like gatekeeping you from running stuff over there, but you do pull in a whole hell of a lot more on Indiegogo. You've got over $7,500 in the bag on Indiegogo with 138 backers, and you've only got 38 backers on Kickstarter. So it's 100 less, and you're at 1709, but you do have 10 more days. So it is entirely possible that you see over 50, maybe even 60 backers, but it still seems like the concentration of indie comic book fans is following you on Indiegogo.
That's right. And
we had the same thing with our campaign. With the same thing.
And I'll be honest,
they were good to us, but it's all on Indiegogo.
That's right. Well, the thing, and I'll be honest, I did all my prep for Indiegogo, right? Kickstarter was something that after the launch and after I hit the funding, I said, let me put it on there. And, I'd kind of already exhausted all my email list and et cetera. And, though granted, when you post it on Kickstarter, they automatically, everybody who's backed anything you've ever done on there, they automatically shoot it out to them. And so that was meaningful. And I was just kind of curious to say, hey, if I just plop this on here and just hustle it around there a little bit, will it connect? And so, anyways, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so there wasn't any of the momentum that had been pushed into the Indiegogo side of it.
We had the exact same thing though. I looked at your numbers and backer percentage, and I looked at ours, and I was like, this almost breaks down like the same. Like this
really
down
interesting.
The line, percentage wise, it's very similar. Money wise and backer wise to the numbers we were getting. And you did this is the backpack on Kickstarter, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, this
I
is
said
so
phenomenal.
Awesome.
Damn it, Bancroft.
It's so good. It really is.
Yeah, but it is great. I really want to get my hands on one of these.
Yeah.
So definitely bring it over to Indiegogo when you go in
to,
demand, which is great because you
well.
can do that, which is nice. You do have to do 2 different things, but you can always bring the campaign from Kickstarter onto Indiegogo afterward, and Kickstarter or Indiegogo might even let you combine your campaigns. I'm not sure. We're still looking into doing that.
What they do, I'm sure you can do. What they do is you can have something launch on Kickstarter and bring it to Indiegogo straight to In Demand, and then it notes it that you did it in a previous another platform.
When you run them concurrently, I wasn't sure if you could still.
We're still looking into taking the totals and
them,
numbers and everything that we did on Kickstarter and integrating into the total that we have on Indiegogo for being in demand, because we've broken over 30-something thousand now at this point, and it would be nice to combine the backer totals
Yeah.
It would just be nice to like have it all in one place so that we could see rather than having like add up things from all these other places.
No, that's really impressive. You guys really hustled it, to get to that, place. That's a hard spot to get to in the indie space, and that's awesome. And I know obviously you guys are streaming, you're hustling it, you're
hard. We're gonna go
cons.
hard for number
Yeah.
2. Yeah, the cons were actually really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And funny enough, a lot of them went to Indiegogo.
Yeah.
So it's like
I
know, we're-
figured at the cons they'd
go to
more to
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter because a lot of people are
No.
like, "What's an Indiegogo?"
What's an- yeah.
And we're like, "Oh, it's just like Kickstarter. It's crowdfunding platform. It's a little bit different.
Oh,
it
maybe
takes
we
the
had better
money out
covers on
now as
Indiegogo.
opposed to
Mhm.
Kickstarter." And they were like, "Oh, cool. That's really awesome." And then they went to Indiegogo instead.
What do you
So-
think, other than like the
Yes,
promotional element, since you have run campaigns on Kickstarter before? I think you ran everything but the 8th on Kickstarter or on Indiegogo and Kickstarter separately.
Yeah, no. So what I did is I did Escape the Night, the board game on Kickstarter, which worked out really well. I mean, that was a big hit for us. It did 6,700 backers. That also had the benefit of the star of my
Being
TV
a
show,
game.
Joey Graceffa, promoting with 13 million followers on YouTube, versus me with, you know what I mean? And so the massive difference. And then we did a Sunder over there on Kickstarter, which worked out really well.
That's the game. Yeah.
Yep. And which, yes, you can see some of the components right here.
Dude. For
Looks
real.
so good.
Yeah, you can see.
Amazing.
Yeah, so you got this set up here. And so that is really so I think that there in a perfect world, I think there's probably a way to, Billy Tucci does it too, who's a really nice fellow. I think there's a way to do it too. And it's also people have habits, the way they go to look for things. And so I think in this case, we're trying to connect with as many people as we can because we're looking, we're trying to authentically connect with people who are interested in our creative work, right?
Yeah,
So it's
you
like
want comic books or games. Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
getting as many people involved as you can. I mean, forget the ideological differences. Everyone can be fans, right? Like you can be fans
That's
of
right.
the same stuff. You can all like the same thing. You're allowed. You're allowed to like stuff, guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've often felt that like sometimes it's like an ideological war. It's like, why put that on fandom? That's never really been the case in history. Like it wasn't like in the 80s, they were like only people who vote this way or have these certain feelings about some policy
Right.
can watch this movie or participate in this book. Like that's a way random thing, that's all of a sudden
You
comes
did
out.
have entertainment that was somewhat polarized, but certainly not these ideas of fandoms. Fandoms, like the earliest that I can think of, like a fandom would be like Howdy Doody. Like
Right.
kids sitting in front of the radio with their outfits on and stuff like that. But you didn't used to have stuff like that. It's not like in Victorian literature when you had opposing political parties, you had some people liking it and other people's being condemned. Well, you kind of did back in this.
Well, there was
Maybe
the
there's
idea
something
was
there.
that movies, sports, comics, they all used to be what they called like, Eric T understands.
Yeah.
They used to be, this idea of water cooler conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
it was the thing that you could always be like, hey, we don't agree about religion or politics or whatever, but we can talk about movies, we can talk about sports,
Right.
we can talk about things. And now, unfortunately, these kind of divisive energies have crept into even those things that were like, basketball, what? Crept into everything else, and which is really kind of a shame. That's been the place that it's just been totally like infiltrated when really it's like, hey, we just want to tell these really cool stories. If you don't like it, that's fine. Just go over here and just read something else. There's no war needed because there's no boundaries and there's no rules. Like you just don't buy something.
Right.
This isn't health insurance. This isn't car insurance. You don't have to have any of this stuff. It's all choice. But anyways.
Mo, you're right. It wasn't, it wasn't CG that didn't get to go on Kickstarter and just decided to go on Indiegogo. There were definitely gatekeeping policies at work that kind of pigeonholed comic book creators onto Indiegogo, but they have thrived as a result. There is a thriving comic book fandom over there on Indiegogo on that platform for creators who come together to make that community even richer and ironically more diverse and more exciting and more fun. There are also creators of all walks of life over there on Indiegogo creating stuff that only came to be because they were not embraced by a different platform. Now, this is not to
Sure.
shit on Kickstarter. I have my own problems with the platform, which goes entirely to like the
I
user
was gonna say,
interface.
it's more the user.
Yeah, that's user. I agree with you. Those are
Like,
user
for me,
interface issues which have nothing to do with that.
A million
Right.
years prefer Indiegogo because it's just a better platform to use as a creator,
Sure.
as someone who's
Yep.
putting up campaigns, having secret tiers, having the in demand, having images on the perk drop down box. I mean, like, they're just little things as a
But they
creator
fit
where
your personal
you
preferences
prefer
for how
to
you
use
like
on Indiegogo.
to
Once
Totally.
again, not to shit on Kickstarter, even though it sounds like I'm gonna keep doing that. But it seems
I
that there
agree with
is
you.
a
There's some.
platform you lean into.
That's right, and mechanically, I agree with it. It's much more convenient that the charging along the way as well instead of at the end, because then you always have that big credit card fallout. And there's just some things about it that are you wish would change. And though interestingly enough, Kickstarter sent me a survey, and all the things they asked about was all these things we've just described. Should we have pictures on the perks?
Really?
Right.
Maybe it's
they
because
said-
someone's been like, why don't
Yeah.
you have the things Indiegogo has? Why do you
Yeah.
use? I mean,
They-
you don't.
They've been hearing it, and now the surveys are going out about it. And once again, I agree with you, and I agree. And what's unfortunate, you're right, is what happened is, and it wasn't even that Kickstarter initially, like sort of like, so to speak, like made its platform unfriendly.
Right.
Some people, fandoms, right, got in there and made complaints, which resulted in lawsuits and other real things that created this polarization, right, which is such a shame. That it wasn't Kickstarter that initially kicked the Richard off, right? That wasn't actually how it started. Randomly.
War Party got thrown off there too. It wasn't just one guy; it was a series.
Sure, but it wasn't.
Right,
But it wasn't
started
randomly done, right? It didn't randomly they didn't, as a corporation, make that choice. Somebody in the audience came to the corporation and said, "Hey,
yeah,
right."
Right.
That's the saddest thing about it, is that
Yeah.
people
and I think what people reacted to, was the fact that the platform buckled
Didn't stand up
to the complaints.
Yeah.
Gate kept the platform and then did a whole bunch of virtue signaling right behind that to try and say, hey, we disavow these other
It could have been
creators.
handled differently.
Yeah, but that's it.
Sure.
It's a very good way of saying it. And getting off that subject, why don't we go and talk about the campaigns in themselves and talk about the tiers that you can get. You have original art for sale on Indiegogo, which you don't on the Kickstarter because you got the backpack over there, and I do appreciate that. Are there going to be more stretch goals? I mean, you just announced the 10K.
I really like the 10K stretch goal. I want it. We need to get to 10K. I need it.
The notebook, yeah.
Yes.
And are you going to be
Need
combining
it.
totals for it?
No, so initially, I was not going to combine totals for it, right? Because I think it's a little too confusing for people across the platforms, and they can just look at the platform in front of them. But let's see how things shake out, and that may very well be the case.
Yeah, we did that. I think there were people that did not understand on Kickstarter that we were combining it. I think they were a little confused.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be happy in the end when they get all of the
20 stretch goals.
But like it didn't do anything as far as like exciting the Kickstarter base. Like, oh, we're gonna get this next stretch goal and look at all the things we got.
And there is something to be said about like the racing
it.
incentivization of what's the next thing that we can get. You really do see that it was obvious in the people that backed the campaign that we ran. They were like constantly, what's the next one? What's the next thing we get? When do we get it? And when we launched on Kickstarter and we did get that bump because we combined the two totals, people were like losing their mind because it's like you were getting one after another because both platforms were pulling the money together. But I want to stop talking about us and talk about Adam. That's it.
Yes,
that's awesome.
We need to get to 10K. Frequency Girl needs this notebook, please.
Yes, this was my way of like, how do I give people art that isn't a print? You know what I mean? Because I've backed 170 campaigns and I can't use another print.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm
like, when I saw this, I'm like, oh, why don't we think of that? This is brilliant.
It's like I cannot handle another print. It just goes in a drawer because there's no wall space left. There's none of that's available. It's like right where the notebook I use them every day for to-dos, for anything. And so it's like if I can turn the stretch goals into things you'll use, then maybe it will be even more exciting. So yes, I hope we get here. And I think that probably in the end we'll do some combining, to make it a reality for if we don't. But I think I agreed to keep it clear so that people at Kickstarter weren't trying to check the other thing. I just kept them separate, and we'll get there. I think that anyway. So that's my take on stretch goals: is that can they be something that either enhances the book, because that's the thing you really have is the book, and or can it be something you'll use physically, at least for me.
Yeah, some people, we did all of the common crowdfunding stretch goals, the stickers, the bookmarks. We went a little bit originally with the standees because I thought that was kind of neat, but a lot of other people have been doing standees, so maybe not that original. We did all of like the tchotchkes. I think the next one we're going to try and lean into what you're doing, where you're taking the art and you're making things people can use out of them, like this notebook. I thought that was really, really clever. A little bit jealous and kind of want.
I know, like you'll probably see a notebook on our volume 2 campaign.
You won't. You'll see other things, but it's a great way to use the additional art that you want to bring in. Because I was, that's a thing. You're bringing in some incredibly talented art. You've got Maxie, you've got Mike. How did you put your team together? I lost him.
Oh, he's muted.
You're muted. You muted yourself.
Oh yeah. Mike and Maxie, I had them do a short story for the Kill Journal. It was my way to test them out working together. I felt like they belonged together because I felt like Mike's colors and Maxie's lines were just made to be together. And so I tested them out on a 6-page story. And I feel like they just had belonged together. So we did a 6-page story. It was wonderful working with both Mike and Maxie. They were lovely guys. And I said, all right, let's go do a whole big journey together. So that's how it began. And I hate to say it, I have to sneak in just a minute as I've got to jump into another lovely meeting at work as I'm stuck out here. But that's how the team was assembled. I always try to work with the artist, whether I'm commissioning something for someone, some of them, or getting them to do a short story. I never want to just hit them cold, just because artists have certain ways, and you can kind of learn a little bit about their reliability. And I've had multiple times, like the Kill Journal. Jason Krager is the third artist who was hired for that book. The first two just didn't materialize, and pages. Yeah, they just didn't get pages, and it delayed everything so much. But Jason Krager was so amazing and stalwart and delivered 100 pages. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. So I think there's something important though about trying out artists, colorists, and people in a setting where you can sort of learn how they work and behave, and then decide whether or not you take the journey with them. But thank you guys for having me on the show.
Hey man, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience before you jet?
Back Kids and Monsters. You will be grateful. We're pouring our hearts into it.
All right. So that's going to be it for us tonight, guys. Don't forget to tune in next time. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications.
And tune into the frequency.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Boom.
Hold on, it's not playing.